You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
Now it's time to talk to Andy from the Sheppey Fire Station. Andy, it's always good to have you here in the studio.
Hi Daniel, thanks for inviting me back. It's very good to be back. Tonight I'd like to talk with you, mate, about summer safety and how we can become a little bit safer over the summer, how we can perhaps reduce some of the incidents that are happening around, put a little bit of a local feel on what Kent Fire and Rescue are doing out in the community this summer.
Now, you just mentioned about the summer safety, so I was wondering if you could perhaps expand on that, talk a little bit more about it, some of the things you attend as well.
Well, we all like to take advantage of what summer we get. Summer's a time when people like to be outdoors, but it's also a time when Kent Fire and Rescue find their resources can be rather stretched, dealing with lots of small outdoor fires. Given the right conditions, these can spread. Just give you a couple of stats, really. I mean, last year, Kent Fire and Rescue attended, within the county, over 4,000 outdoor fires. 85% of these were believed to have been deliberate. So a lot of these are preventable. And statistics show that the outdoor fires, they include everything from grass fires, bonfires out of control, barbecue and general rubbish fires, all things that we can try and reduce and try and prevent happening in the first place. So the aim of doing our safety campaigns is to try and reduce the amount of fires that we actually go to and prevent the effects of fire happening in the first place. And
I know next you wanted to talk a little bit about grass fires.
Yeah, Daniel, grass fires are one of the major reasons that our numbers of fires increase during the summer, and by the nature of the seasons, the grass is a lot drier and it burns a lot quickly. But what I don't think people appreciate is how fast some of these fires can spread. Given the right conditions, you only need a little bit of wind, and what starts as a very small fire can quickly spread to a whole field. And it's dependent on whether the grass is laying down, standing up, a load of factors, and it can become out of control really, really quickly. Now, we believe that a lot of these fires are actually preventable. As I said earlier, probably 85% of them are started deliberately. We categorise them in two categories. So we've got deliberate and accidental. Cover accidental first, and they can be started things like carelessly discarded cigarettes. A simple thing that you might not think would spread, but if you throw a cigarette out of a car window or for example, you could be miles away, then that grass verge central reservation is well alight, and these by their nature put firefighters at risk putting the fire out. So we would urge people not to throw cigarettes out of their car window, or when they're out in rural areas, just have a thought. Make sure they're extinguished and don't throw them around on the ground carelessly, because the grass could be dry and it will easily catch light. The deliberate ones are the preventable ones. They're the ones that we can stop. People being vigilant. I mean, I could give you an example of incidents that locally we've had in the last 6 weeks. An area of Rushenden where we've had 5 grass fires in exactly the same location at similar times of the day. Now these are being investigated, and we would just ask people to be vigilant, and if they see something happening or they have information, is perhaps contact the police on their 101 service and give some details over so that repeat offenders can be caught and appropriate action taken. There's we look at perhaps other reasons why grass fires start, and that could be that people have a barbecue, but they've placed it in the wrong place, and the heat from a barbecue stays there for a long time. So we'd urge people to place their barbecues on clear, bare earth, especially the disposable ones, and make sure the ashes are cold before disposing of them. Certainly do not bury your ash on the beach, because the heat stays in the coals for a very, very long time, and it heats up the pebbles, and people can come along and burn themselves. Again, don't throw it onto open ground where it has the risk of catching grass alight. So we just urge people to be really, really careful. The summer's not very long here, so but our incidents tend to be between sort of May and October, so it's a fairly long season, especially towards the end when the grass starts to go brown and it becomes very, very dry. That's when the fires really spread. It really does put firefighters in danger when they're tackling big fires. Fortunately, we don't have anything as big that's going on as in Arizona at the moment, where sadly firefighters have lost their lives. But only 4 years ago, a firefighter got horrific burns tackling a grass fire, and it took 2 years for him to recover, purely because of a fire that was started deliberately, got out of control, and it took an immense amount of resources to put out. These are all resources that are then taken away from attending house fires and really sort of life-threatening incidents. So it does really pull a drain on our resources when we have to go out to deliberate grass fires. Some of them are very small and are dealt with very quickly, but we'd also ask parents to try and educate their children as to how fast fire spreads. We try and do this through the education programme that Kent Fire and Rescue run in schools, but it needs to be backed up by reinforcement at home.
And I know you wanted to cover a little bit about the sort of safe planning of barbecues.
Yeah, but the main thing, Daniel, is that barbecues are not dangerous if they're used responsibly. We all like a barbecue. Sun's come out, we like to cook outdoors and have a good time, and we're not going to spoil any of that. But there's a few basic rules that you should know and keep in the back of your mind when you're having your barbecue. The main first one is placement of the barbecue. It may seem obvious to have it in a nice open area, but you'll be surprised at the incidents we go to where it's been put against a wooden fence to stop the wind, if there's any breeze. And of course the heat reflection from a barbecue is actually quite immense. A barbecue is going for quite a while, and the heat build up and reflection can actually make things self-combust. It doesn't actually have to be touching the barbecue. So avoid putting them against fences, under trees, grass where we've mentioned grass earlier, but if you've got coals that fall out, could set fire, and it will spread very, very quickly. Just keep it in an open space. A lot of the modern barbecues, of course, gas. It comes in massive sizes now, so we check that when you get it out of your storage, check the hoses, check that they are fit for use. If they've been stored in a shed, mice might have nibbled the hose. We don't want any gas leaks. If you do have concerns that there might be a little gas leak, there's a little trick that you can mix some washing up liquid with water, rub it over the hose, and if you see any bubbles, that's an indication of a leak. We'll get you to turn the gas off and not use the barbecue until it's fixed. But even then, a solid barbecue, we would ask people never to use petrol or paraffin to start a barbecue. It is really dangerous, and you really run the risk of flash burns. also that it makes the food taste absolutely awful. Use your barbecue as you would, and when you've finished, make sure that the ash is disposed of appropriately. Either let it get totally cold and dispose of it the next day, empty the ash onto some open bare soil. Never put hot ash in a wheelie bin, because it could take 2 hours for the stuff to smoulder. The wheelie bins are invariably stored against the house. The wheelie bin goes up, and then that leads to the potential to spread, and it has happened. Don't want to be a killjoy, but the person that's doing the cooking, no matter how tempting that ice cold Stella, other beers are available, seems, try and steer away from the alcohol until you've done the cooking and the barbecue is underway. Be safe and try and keep pets, children and games away from the cooking area itself, because we don't want accidents to happen. We don't want the barbecues to get knocked over and the fire to spread. So, although we want people to have fun, we also want them to be safe and prevent fires happening from this type of activity.
Now, as we probably all know, that larger numbers of visitors stay on the island, especially in this summer period, in caravans and, of course, camping as well. So I was wondering, can you offer any specialist advice or specific advice for those sorts of people, or even people staying on the island longer term as well?
Well, caravans, by their nature, Daniel, are just compact living spaces. Where unfortunately fire can spread really, really quickly, with serious consequences. Fortunately, incidents are rare, but they do happen. Nationally, around 1,400 caravans catch light each year. Now, that's quite a shocking statistic, really. I mean, here's a pub quiz question for you. How many caravans and chalets do you think are on the island? I can tell you it's around the 3,800 mark, so we have quite a community, especially at the eastern end of the island. The most important thing that we can stress to people in a caravan is to make sure you have a working smoke alarm, and test it weekly. The best ones to have in a caravan are of the optical type, as they're probably more suitable. Caravans are open plan. Nuisance alarms are less likely. Some of these are referred to as toast proof on the packaging. So there's less risk of you taking the battery out and forgetting to put it back in. It's really important that these are fitted. We advise people to make sure they site caravans at least 6 metres apart when you're in a touring caravan, and that's 6 metres away from any other caravan, any other vehicle. It's just that if an incident did happen, there's less likelihood of it spreading through radiated heat. Not saying it won't happen, but that's sort of a ballpark figure that we look to. If you've got your children staying in the caravan, make sure they know what to do. Make sure they know what the smoke alarm sounds like. Make sure they know what to do of a night time, where to get out, and to make sure they raise the alarm and get out appropriately. Keep a torch handy. Never use candles in caravans. Again, caravans are confined spaces, and if they're not well ventilated, then candles can reduce the sort of the air in a caravan, and we ask, and they become dangerous in that sort of environment. We also get people using tents, and with those specifically, we would advise people certainly not to smoke in their tent, and never cook within a tent. Did you know that there have been instances of people bringing a barbecue into a tent for heat purposes? Sadly, there have been deaths through this because of the carbon monoxide that a smouldering barbecue, even if it's not visibly smoking, just giving off heat, it still gives off vast amounts of carbon monoxide. Exactly the same gas that you would get from a faulty gas appliance, and it just builds up and it could kill in minutes. So again, we don't want to take the fun out of caravanning camping, but there's just a few simple rules to enable that you stay safe in that environment, because it is higher risk and a more compact living environment where all the risks are, slightly heightened, and you just got to be a little bit more careful.
You mentioned earlier that rubbish fires are an increasing problem, so I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about that, Andy.
Yes, Daniel. I mean, sadly, rubbish fires are an increasing problem locally, and they're caused by people discarding waste, which is then set alight by others, or people burning their own waste as they see it as a more convenient way of getting rid of something they no longer need. We've all got a responsibility to try and keep our streets, our community and our country clean. And even a small amount of waste that's discarded, such as a bin bag, which someone sets alight, that fire can then spread very, very quickly. And even if it's next to a building, there's a risk that the building could go up, and it's not just confined to that, and it leaves such a mess when it's when it's burnt. I mean, rubbish is unsightly by its nature, but when it's then been burnt and there's all the black ash and the blackened walls, it really sort of really lets the area down. Kent Fire and Rescue's aim is to try and prevent these fires before they happen. Perhaps if you're burning waste in your own garden, I'd like to take this opportunity to expel a few myths, really. We do get called out to a lot of bonfires, and a lot of these calls are put in by people because they are a nuisance. If you're burning stuff in your garden, perhaps have a little bit of consideration. Look around for people, whether they got their windows open, they're washing out. This 6 o'clock thing in the evening, it tends to be the point where everybody sets their fires. We would ask people to look at what they can and they can't burn. You're allowed to burn organic garden matter in the confines of your own garden, but when we start burning items that have been manufactured, such as sofas, furniture, all these items are treated with chemicals, and then all these chemicals are released into the atmosphere, and Kent Fire and Rescue takes our environmental responsibility very, very seriously. So if we then come along and put gallons of water on it, any unburnt material, the chemicals can be washed into the ground, and this has real knock-on effects, and it's things that people don't really appreciate. Here's a fact for you: a video cassette releases as much smoke and toxins as a 3-piece suite. Now that might seem shocking, but by the nature of its makeup and the materials that it contains, it has a huge environmental impact. It's better to dispose of it responsibly in your domestic waste, and then it's all disposed of responsibly. We look at burning of garden waste. I know we want to get rid of it very, very quickly, because once you've cut all your shrubbery down, you just want to be done with it. And the easiest way people think of is, rather than taking it down the tip, because there's a lot of it, will burn it. Green garden waste creates a huge amount of smoke, which can sometimes be a real nuisance. And if there's no wind, this smoke just lays at ground level, and it can spread over a huge area and affect a lot of people. So it can create a real nuisance. Let it dry, for a couple of weeks, and then burn it in small quantities in a container in the garden, so a brazier or something. We're not saying you can't burn it, but just think what you're burning. When we're looking at rubbish out on the street, we all get wound up by the amount of rubbish that's been dumped, and Kent Fire and Rescue does what it can to get this cleared as quickly as possible. But what you can do is look at how you can help us, because we can't be in all places at once, is look at perhaps using the council app. It's called My Council Services. It's a very good app. And a listener has just rung into the studio with a concern on fire, and this is something that can be reported via the council app. You can say what your problem is, where it is, it pinpoints your location, it puts in a report, and the council will get back to you via the app. It's a very, very good tool. Kent Fire and Rescue use it. And if you see a dumped sofa or a potential for where there's rubbish that can be set alight, report it via this council app, and it will then be removed, and you'll get updated reports. It's a very good tool. So we just want to try and reduce these fires happening in the first place, because they are becoming an increasing problem.
And before you go, is there anything else you'd like to cover, and or any useful contact details you can give out to our listeners?
Well, I'd like to point your listeners to our website, the Kent Fire and Rescue website, which has a wealth of information and downloadable leaflets. You can contact Kent Fire and Rescue through the website. The address is www.kent.fire-uk.org, and you can that's the homepage, and you can quite easily navigate your way through to any area that you want from there. We as a local station are going to be out in the community a lot during the summer, so we hope to see you around. Don't be afraid, come up, say hi. Any concerns you have, we'll do our best to answer your questions. And feel free to pop into your local station down in Sheerness if you've got any problems. We're there for you. You can come down and say hi, and we'll answer your question if we can. For home fire safety, you can book up a home safety visit or get advice from a free phone number, which is free from a landline, and I'll give you the number for that. That's 0800 923 7000. It's free from a landline. You can book up a home safety visit where smoke alarms are provided free of charge if required, and you'll get specific advice to safety in your home. We want everybody to be safe, and we do our best to achieve that.
And as always, I'd like to thank you very much for coming along this evening.
That's good, and I look forward to coming back in the autumn.
Yeah, it'd be good to see you around October, I think.
Thank you very much.
That's Andy from Kent Fire and Rescue Sheppey, the Sheppey Fire Station, right here at BRFM 95.6.